Okay, so get ready, because today we're taking a deep dive into some really heavy stuff. We're talking nuclear war. You guys specifically requested a closer look at the real consequences of this kind of conflict. And let me tell you, after going through journalist Annie Jacobsen's research, it's way more intense than anything I ever learned back in school.
Yeah, it really is. You see, most people think about nuclear winter, and they picture like a year of hardship, maybe food shortages before we figure things out. But the science is showing a much, much more devastating picture these days.
Yeah, Jacobsen, she really gets into this in her book. Remember those old nuclear winter theories from way back when, the ones that said we were looking at a year of, like, total frozen wasteland? Turns out that was the best case scenario.
Unfortunately, yeah. The latest research is saying those frozen, lifeless conditions could last, well, not just 1 year, more like 7 to 10 years.
7 to 10 years.
Yeah, 7 to 10. To really wrap our heads around that impact, we're talking about almost a decade where agriculture is basically impossible across the globe. Imagine it. Empty supermarkets, cities abandoned, trade routes totally messed up, a system collapse globally. This isn't just a worldwide famine. This is the collapse of civilization as we know it.
It's straight out of a dystopian novel, like humanity is just fighting to survive.
Bleak, yeah. But unlike an asteroid, this isn't some unavoidable natural thing, right? Nuclear war is a man-made problem, which at least means a man-made solution is possible.
Right, disarmament. And haven't we actually made some progress on that front? I mean, back in the 80s, at the peak of the Cold War, weren't there something like 70,000 nuclear warheads pointed all over the globe? Today it's down to what, around 12,500? That's got to be a good sign, right?
It is progress, yeah. It proves disarmament is possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fragile, this process.
Yeah.
Sadly, recent geopolitical events have really, ramped up global tensions and put a lot of those hard-won treaties at risk.
And that's what's so scary about Jacobsen's book. She talked to all the top defense experts, and here's the really frightening part. Even with all our technology, all our fancy systems, we are not prepared for a large-scale ballistic missile attack.
It's the truth, and it's a tough one. To really understand why it's such a challenge, you have to understand how these attacks actually work. So picture a ballistic missile launch.
Yeah.
3 main phases: boost, mid-course, and terminal. Here's the thing, though. This whole sequence happens crazy fast. We're talking just 26 minutes from launch to impact for a missile going from Moscow to Washington, D.C. That's not a lot of time to react.
26 minutes? I can barely make a cup of coffee in 26 minutes, let alone, like, coordinate a global defense strategy. So what do we have in place? Is that where these interceptors come in?
Exactly. And that's where Jacobsen's insights become even more important. Her research, it uncovers some pretty surprising facts, I guess you could say, about how effective these defense mechanisms really are, or, well, how limited they are.
Okay, well, let's break that down. First of all, what exactly is an interceptor, and how is it supposed to work?
Think of a missile launch like, say, throwing a rock across a pond. Now imagine trying to stop that rock in midair with another, much smaller rock. That's what an interceptor is trying to do.
So we're trying to, what, hit a bullet with another much smaller bullet? That seems...
Got difficult.
It is insanely difficult. And here's the other problem. We just don't have enough of them. Jacobsen's research, it says the U.S. only has, get this, 44 interceptors ready to go against ICBMs. Think about that. 44 interceptors versus potentially thousands of incoming warheads. That's a terrifying mismatch.
Hold on, wait. Thousands? You're saying there are thousands of these nuclear warheads out there aimed at, well, everywhere. Yeah, it's a scary thought. And these aren't just, hypothetical threats. Jacobsen, she talks about this terrifying incident back in 1983 during the Cold War. A Soviet early warning system, it malfunctioned, and it looked like the U.S. had launched a nuclear attack on them. One guy, a single officer named Stanislav Petrov, he was the only one who realized it was a false alarm. He disobeyed orders and chose not to retaliate.
You're saying one man's decision prevented a full-blown nuclear war?
That's right. It just shows how close we've already come to complete annihilation based on, like, a technical glitch.
Yeah.
And the judgment of one person. Makes you wonder, with tensions as high as they are today, can we really rely on luck and individual heroism to prevent a catastrophe?
That is a really, really unsettling question. And I'm guessing that's something Jacobsen explores pretty in-depth in her book.
Oh, absolutely. And what she finds out about our defense systems is even more disturbing. But we'll get into all that right after we come back. You know those 44 interceptors we were just talking about? Turns out they're not exactly our only line of defense.
Wait, really? I kind of thought those were the big guns, like the last resort. What else is there?
Well, we also have these sea-based interceptor systems. They're deployed on Navy ships. Sounds pretty impressive, right? The idea is they can shoot down ballistic missiles while they're still in that boost phase of flight.
Oh, right, right, the boost phase, like you were explaining earlier. That's right at the beginning of the launch when the missile is, well, when it's most vulnerable, so why not just take them out then?
Well, here's the thing. For those sea-based systems to even have a chance of interception during that launch window, those ships, they have to be really close to the launch site, like really close.
Oh, I see. So we're talking about parking warships right off the coast of other countries.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that doesn't exactly say, we come in peace. More like, we're just going to hang out here in your backyard, just in case.
Yeah, it's not the best look if we're going for, building trust and whatnot. Plus, even with those ships in position, if there's a big coordinated attack, those defenses could easily be overwhelmed.
Right.
Some missiles they would definitely get through.
So we're back to square one then. If the land-based interceptors are a gamble, and the whole warship idea is, maybe not the best approach, what are we left with? Honestly, it all feels kind of hopeless.
It's easy to feel that way, I get it, especially with what's at stake here. But what Jacobsen argues is that this hopelessness, this reluctance to even talk about nuclear war because it's just too scary and huge, that's actually part of the problem.
She's got a point. I mean, before we got into all this, I honestly had no clue how close we'd come to nuclear war in the past, let alone how vulnerable we still are today.
Exactly. It's not just some abstract idea in history books, right?
Yeah.
This is real, it's happening now, and ignoring it isn't going to make it go away.
So what can we do about it? As individuals, I mean, what can we actually do that matters with something this big, this complicated?
Never underestimate the power of just knowing about it,
Mm-hmm.
educating yourself. Encourage other people to do the same. I mean, Jacobsen's book is a great place to start. It cuts through all the noise and helps you understand how this stuff works, the risks, the possible outcomes.
Knowledge is power, like they say.
That's it. And once you start digging into this, you realize how much misinformation is out there. Like that whole thing about hypersonic missiles being a game changer.
Oh, yeah.
Not so simple.
Yeah. No, I totally fell for that.
Right. But see, the more we learn, the more we can have real conversations about this, challenge what we think we know, and start demanding better from the people in charge.
Okay, so awareness is a good starting point. But what about taking action? Like, what can people do to actually make a difference with something like nuclear proliferation?
There are actually quite a few things. One way is to support organizations that are working towards nuclear disarmament. These groups are out there every day advocating for policy changes, trying to get people talking, working to actually reduce the number of nuclear weapons in the world.
Right.
Another important thing is to talk to our elected officials.
You mean like speak up?
Exactly. Call them, go to town hall meetings, and let them know that nuclear disarmament, making sure these weapons don't spread, that this is a priority for you. And you know what else? Supporting good journalism, research like what Jacobsen does, that's crucial. She's shining a light on these really important issues.
Right, so we've got education, we've got speaking up, and supporting the people who are already fighting the good fight. All good stuff, but there's still this nagging feeling of what if it's not enough? What if no matter what we do, things just keep getting worse?
I understand that fear. I really do. And that's why Jacobsen really focuses on the psychology behind this whole idea of nuclear deterrence. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about weapon systems or treaties. It's about people.
Yeah.
The human beings who are making these decisions.
Right, and those decisions, they're affected by all sorts of things. Fear, miscalculations, even ego.
Exactly. And it's a really scary thought, but it just shows how important the human factor is in all of this. We've built this system where we're trusting people to be rational and prevent this awful thing from happening. But at the same time, we all know humans make mistakes. We have bad judgment sometimes, biases.
Just like Stanislav Petrov back in '83. If he hadn't, questioned what he was seeing, if he'd panicked, we might not even be here right now. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person.
It's an unimaginable responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And yet, it just shows how messed up this whole idea of nuclear deterrence really is.
So where do we even go from here? I mean, if the way we've always thought about deterrence is fundamentally flawed, what's the alternative?
That's the million-dollar question. There's no easy answer, but I think Jacobsen's work gives us a few good places to start.
It all comes down to, our perception then, doesn't it? If we want to actually survive this, we have to change how we see these weapons, change how we think about nuclear war itself.
You got it. And that means we got to be able to talk about it. Can't solve a problem we refuse to even acknowledge, right?
Jacobsen's research, it definitely burst my bubble on this whole issue. It's terrifying, for sure, but it also makes you want to do something. Knowing how close we've already come to disaster, how fragile this all is, it makes you want to shout about it from the rooftops.
And that's what we need. More people who understand it, more passion, demanding change. Because listen, it's not enough to just rely on luck at this point, or the actions of one person, like what Stanislav Petrov did. We need real change, and that starts with changing how we all think about this.
It's easier said than done, right? How do you convince people to care about something as, I don't know, huge and terrifying as nuclear war? People are already dealing with so much every day.
Oh, it's a challenge, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we can't just give up.
Right.
We can't just throw our hands up and say it's hopeless. We owe it to ourselves, to the future, to find a better way. And that starts with learning, with talking about it, just like we're doing right now.
Right, so we've got education, we've got speaking up, supporting the organizations out there, fighting for disarmament, all those things.
All important.
But still, on a deeper level, what has to change in how we think to actually escape this whole cycle of fear, of potential annihilation?
I think it comes down to remembering we're all human here. This isn't about us against them, about ideologies or where you're from. It's about recognizing we're all stuck on this planet together. And it has the very real potential to be destroyed.
It's about understanding that if it happens to everyone, no matter what side you're on, where you live. It's a global catastrophe. Every living thing on this planet.
Exactly. And like Jacobsen's book shows us, the only way to win this game is to make sure it never even starts.
So what do we do if this whole idea of deterrence, how we've always thought about it, is flawed? What's the alternative?
It's a tough question. No easy answers. But I do think Jacobsen offers some good starting points. For one, she's all about shifting our focus, moving away from military solutions and towards diplomacy. Instead of just pouring money into bigger, better weapons, what if we put those resources into resolving conflict? Diplomacy, actually building trust between countries.
So it's about real security and not just weapons. It's about working together, understanding each other better.
Exactly. It's a long process. It'll take time, but we got to start somewhere.
And that somewhere is with us, each and every one of us, recognizing there's a problem, educating ourselves and other people, and really holding our leaders accountable.
It's about having the guts to imagine a different future, one where nuclear war is just something in a history book.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something I want to leave you with. If one guy, Stanislav Petrov, could prevent a disaster just by thinking clearly and being brave, imagine what we could do if we all took that responsibility seriously.
Imagine all the money, the billions spent on these weapons. What if it went to education, to healthcare, to fighting climate change? Think about that.
Imagine a future where the words nuclear winter don't scare us, but they remind us of a path we chose not to go down. That's the future we got to fight for. And it starts by recognizing that we have a choice.
We can keep going down this road, this dangerous path of deterrence, always on the edge of disaster. Or we can build something different, a world based on dialogue, on cooperation, on this shared understanding that we need to survive together.
That power, that choice, it's with each and every one of us.
And that's a powerful thought. So to everyone listening, let's talk about this. Let's learn about it. And most importantly, let's do something about it. Because our future depends on it, The future of this whole planet depends on it.